What if I told you that the clock is ticking on one of the most significant opportunities of your life? Imagine a door, invisible to the human eye, standing open before you, a door that leads to eternal peace, love, and purpose. This door, extended by God's infinite grace, has been open for centuries, welcoming all who seek salvation and fulfillment beyond the fleeting treasures of this world. But here's the sobering truth: that door is closing. And with every passing moment, the chance to walk through it diminishes. Throughout history, people have been captivated by the pursuit of wealth, status, and luxury. From towering skyscrapers to social media feeds filled with opulence, humanity seems fixated on material success. But why? Beneath the surface of this pursuit often lies emptiness, an undeniable void that no amount of money, fame, or luxury can fill. Many of us sense this void yet struggle to find answers. If you've ever felt like something essential is missing, like life's fleeting pleasures are masking a deeper longing, then you're not alone. This video is not just another commentary on faith. It's a wake-up call. Together, we'll uncover timeless truths from the Bible, stories of hope and redemption, and modern examples that reveal the urgency of this moment. But let's make one thing clear. This isn't just a lecture or a history lesson. It's an invitation to pause, reflect, and take action. Before we dive deeper, I want to remind you of something important. Your voice matters. Take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next parts of this series. Your engagement not only supports us, but also helps share this message of hope and urgency with others who need to hear it. Now, as we move forward, let's begin exploring the meaning of walking through the door of grace, why it's closing, and what steps you can take to ensure you don't miss this life-changing opportunity. Let's dive into the next section. Throughout the Bible, the concept of grace is woven into the fabric of its teachings, offering a profound glimpse into the boundless mercy and love of God. Among the numerous metaphors used to describe grace, the door is particularly striking. This symbolic doorway represents an invitation extended by God to humanity, a call to reconciliation, forgiveness, and eternal life. However, as with any physical door, it does not remain open indefinitely, urging us to respond while the opportunity is still present. The story of Noah and the ark is one of the most vivid illustrations of this metaphor. In the book of Genesis, Noah is tasked with building an ark in obedience to God's instructions. This massive vessel was not merely a refuge from the floodwaters, but also a representation of God's grace and salvation. For decades, Noah warned his contemporaries of the coming judgment, urging them to turn from their wicked ways and seek refuge in the ark. Despite his efforts, the people continued in their ways, consumed by the pursuits of everyday life, dismissing Noah's warnings as folly. When the rains began and the earth's fountains burst forth, it marked the moment of truth. The door of the ark, which had stood open for so long, was finally shut. Those inside were saved, while those outside faced the devastating consequences of their disbelief. This narrative is more than a historical account. It serves as a poignant reminder of the temporal nature of God's invitation. The ark's door was a physical manifestation of grace, open to all but closed when the time of judgment arrived. This metaphor echoes throughout the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament. In the Gospel of John, Jesus declares, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture." John 10 verse 9. Here, Jesus presents himself as the ultimate doorway to salvation, offering a path to peace and eternal life. Just as Noah's ark provided a safe haven from the flood, Christ offers a spiritual refuge from sin and separation from God. The parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25 further emphasizes the urgency of entering through the door of grace. In the story, 10 bridesmaids await the arrival of the bridegroom. 5 of them are wise, prepared with enough oil for their lamps, while the other 5 are foolish and unprepared. When the bridegroom arrives, the prepared virgins enter the wedding feast, and the door is shut. The foolish virgins, having gone to buy oil, return too late and find themselves excluded. Hearing the chilling words, "Truly, I say to you, I do not know you," This parable underscores a critical truth. The door of grace remains open, but it will not remain so forever. The time to act is now, while the invitation is still extended. Procrastination or indifference can lead to missed opportunities, as illustrated by the unprepared virgins who failed to prioritize their readiness. The imagery of the door of grace also invites us to reflect on the nature of God's patience. In 2 Peter 3 verse 9, we read, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance." This patience is not a sign of delay, but a demonstration of God's deep desire for humanity to respond to his call. However, this period of grace will not last indefinitely. Just as in the days of Noah, there will come a moment when the door is closed, and the opportunity for salvation is no longer available. In our contemporary world, the door of grace is still open. Through the message of the gospel, God continues to extend his invitation to all people, regardless of their background or past mistakes. The open door is a testament to his inclusive love, offering hope and restoration to anyone who seeks it. Yet, this invitation also carries a sense of urgency. It challenges us to examine our priorities and consider whether we have walked through the door of grace or are lingering on the threshold. The door of grace is not merely about personal salvation. It also calls us to action. As recipients of God's grace, we are entrusted with the responsibility of sharing this message with others. In 2 Corinthians 5 verse 20, Paul writes, "We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God were making his appeal through us." This means that we are called to extend the invitation of grace to those around us, encouraging them to step through the door while it is still open. Finally, the metaphor of the door of grace challenges us to live with a sense of hope and anticipation. Just as Noah trusted in God's promise and acted in faith, we are called to live with an eternal perspective, knowing that the door of grace leads to a future far greater than anything this world can offer. This hope sustains us in times of difficulty and inspires us to persevere in our faith journey. In conclusion, the door of grace is a powerful biblical metaphor that encapsulates the essence of God's love and mercy. It invites us to step into a relationship with him, offering forgiveness, restoration, and eternal life. Yet, it also serves as a sober reminder that this invitation is not endless. The stories of Noah's Ark, the 10 virgins, and Jesus' teachings all point to the urgency of responding to God's call. Today, the door of grace stands open, beckoning us to enter and experience the fullness of God's blessings. The question is, will we step through before it closes? Throughout history, humanity has faced numerous warnings, be they from nature, science, or voices of wisdom, that were ignored to dire consequences. These cautionary tales serve as stark reminders of the perils of negligence and the often irreversible outcomes of inaction. Whether the warnings stem from environmental concerns, technological risks, or social upheavals, ignoring them can lead to tragic results. One of the most prominent examples is the Titanic disaster, dubbed unsinkable. The Titanic's maiden voyage in 1912 was marked by overconfidence and disregard for cautionary advice. Despite multiple iceberg warnings from nearby ships, the crew pressed forward at high speed, prioritizing punctuality and prestige over safety. When the ship struck an iceberg, the lack of adequate lifeboats and preparation compounded the tragedy. More than 1.500 lives were lost, and the disaster became a sobering lesson in humility and the consequences of ignoring expert warnings. A similar disregard for caution contributed to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. Operators at the plant ignored safety protocols during a late-night test, disabling crucial systems and causing the reactor to overheat. The explosion that followed released massive amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere, contaminating large areas of Europe. The warnings of engineers and experts were ignored in favor of expedience, and the world witnessed one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. Decades later, Chernobyl remains a chilling testament to the dangers of hubris and the cost of ignoring expertise. Environmental warnings have often been neglected, leading to catastrophic consequences. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s in the United States is a prime example. Farmers, eager to maximize crop yields, overplowed the Great Plains, ignoring warnings about the risks of soil depletion and erosion. When a severe drought struck, the land could no longer sustain crops, and massive dust storms ravaged the region. Thousands of families were displaced, and the environmental and economic toll was immense. This tragedy underscored the importance of sustainable farming practices and heeding ecological advice. In more recent history, the global response to climate change has been riddled with ignored warnings. Scientists have sounded the alarm for decades, presenting evidence of rising temperatures, melting ice caps, and increasing natural disasters. Despite these warnings, progress in addressing climate change has been slow, often hindered by political inaction and public skepticism. The consequences of this delay are becoming increasingly apparent, with extreme weather events, rising sea levels, and ecosystem collapses threatening the planet. Ignoring these warnings not only endangers the environment, but also jeopardizes the future of humanity. The 2008 global financial crisis also highlights the dangers of ignoring economic warnings. Leading up to the collapse, numerous experts cautioned against the reckless lending practices and speculative behaviors dominating financial markets. Warnings about the unsustainable nature of the housing bubble went unheeded, as investors and institutions prioritized short-term gains. When the bubble burst, it triggered a worldwide economic downturn, leaving millions unemployed and erasing trillions of dollars in wealth. The crisis revealed the systemic vulnerabilities created by ignoring prudent financial oversight and regulation. On a personal level, ignoring medical warnings can lead to devastating outcomes. Countless individuals have dismissed symptoms or avoided routine checkups, only to face severe health crises later. Stories of ignored advice regarding lifestyle changes, such as quitting smoking, reducing stress, or adopting a healthier diet, are all too common. Tragically, many of these cases result in preventable diseases or conditions that could have been mitigated with early intervention. Social movements also offer examples of ignored warnings, often with significant societal consequences. During the civil rights movement in the United States, activists warned of the explosive consequences of racial inequality and systemic discrimination. While some progress was made, many in power ignored or resisted these calls for change, leading to prolonged suffering and social unrest. Similarly, warnings about the dangers of unchecked authoritarianism were ignored in pre-World War II Europe, paving the way for the rise of fascism and the devastating impact of the war. In the realm of technology, the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, AI, and automation presents a modern-day warning. Experts have raised concerns about job displacement, ethical dilemmas, and the potential misuse of AI. Yet, these warnings often go unheeded in the race for innovation and profit. The lack of proactive regulation and oversight may lead to unforeseen consequences, from mass unemployment to ethical violations that challenge societal norms. These examples illustrate a common thread: the tendency to prioritize immediate benefits or convenience over long-term caution. Ignoring warnings often stems from overconfidence, denial, or a lack of accountability. The consequences, however, remind us of the critical importance of heeding advice, respecting expertise, and acting with foresight as we face the challenges of the present and future. From environmental crises to technological risks, the lessons of these ignored warnings must guide our actions. By learning from the past and addressing warnings with urgency and sincerity, we can avoid repeating the mistakes that have cost humanity so dearly. The choice is ours. Will we listen, or will we once again bear the consequences of neglect? History has a way of echoing itself, with past events often foreshadowing modern dilemmas. The mistakes and warnings ignored in the past have eerie parallels in today's world, reminding us that humanity is prone to repeating its errors if the lessons of history are not heeded. From environmental degradation to technological challenges, modern-day examples reflect a continued disregard for warnings that could lead to severe consequences if left unaddressed. One of the clearest parallels is the ongoing global response to climate change. For decades, scientists have warned about rising temperatures, melting polar ice, and the catastrophic impact of greenhouse gas emissions. Reports from organizations like the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, have provided alarming data. Yet significant global action remains elusive. Just as the overexploitation of land led to the Dust Bowl in the 1930s, today's industrial practices and deforestation are pushing ecosystems to their limits. Extreme weather events, such as wildfires in Australia, floods in Pakistan, and record-breaking hurricanes, are no longer isolated incidents but direct consequences of this inaction. Despite these clear warnings, political divisions, corporate interests, and public apathy continue to hinder progress, mirroring past instances where short-term gains overshadowed long-term well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic serves as another striking example. Public health experts and virologists had long warned of the potential for a global pandemic, even identifying coronaviruses as a specific threat. The 2002 to 2003 SARS outbreak and the 2012 MERS outbreak were early warnings of the devastating impact such diseases could have. Yet, when COVID-19 emerged in late 2019, many governments were unprepared, dismissing early reports or delaying necessary measures. The result was a global health crisis that claimed millions of lives and disrupted economies worldwide. This echoes the lessons from past epidemics, such as the 1918 influenza pandemic, where initial warnings were ignored, leading to widespread devastation. Technological advancements, while transformative, have also introduced significant risks. The rise of artificial intelligence, AI, and automation is one of the most prominent concerns of the modern era. Experts like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking have cautioned about the unchecked development of AI, warning of potential scenarios where machines surpass human control. Issues such as algorithmic bias, data privacy, and the ethical use of AI are already manifesting in fields ranging from law enforcement to healthcare. Much like the Industrial Revolution, which brought immense progress but also exploitation and environmental harm, the current technological revolution is a double-edged sword. Ignoring these warnings could lead to a future where societal inequalities are exacerbated and ethical dilemmas challenge our humanity. Economic disparities today also echo the past, with parallels to the lead-up to the 2008 financial crisis. Despite lessons learned from that economic collapse, risky financial practices and unchecked speculation remain prevalent in global markets. The rise of cryptocurrency, while revolutionary, has also brought volatility and scams, with billions lost in fraudulent schemes. Similarly, the increasing reliance on speculative investments and the housing market's instability in certain regions reflect the same warning signs that were ignored before the previous crash. If left unaddressed, these patterns could lead to another major economic downturn. Social and political polarization is another area where history repeats itself. The rise of authoritarian regimes and the erosion of democratic norms in several countries today mirror the political climates of the early 20th century, which saw the emergence of fascism and totalitarianism. Warnings from historians and political scientists about the dangers of eroding democratic institutions, spreading misinformation, and suppressing dissent are alarmingly relevant. The storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, highlighted how fragile democracy can be when warnings about extremism and division are ignored. Environmental disasters caused by human negligence are occurring with increasing frequency. Events such as the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and the ongoing deforestation of the Amazon rainforest highlight humanity's continued exploitation of natural resources without regard for the long-term consequences. These actions parallel past environmental catastrophes like the Exxon Valdez spill or the deforestation that led to the collapse of ancient civilizations such as the Maya. The current trajectory suggests that without a significant shift in priorities, we are destined to repeat these environmental tragedies on an even larger scale. The rapid spread of misinformation in the digital age is another pressing issue with historical parallels. Just as propaganda played a significant role in shaping public opinion during World War II, today's misinformation campaigns manipulate social media to sow division and confusion. The lack of regulation and accountability for tech giants, combined with the spread of false information, has undermined trust in institutions and created societal rifts. Despite repeated warnings from experts about the need to address these challenges, meaningful action has been slow. Modern-day parallels to historical warnings remind us of humanity's tendency to prioritize convenience, power, or profit over wisdom and foresight. Whether it's the climate crisis, technological risks, or political instability, the challenges of today demand urgent attention. If we fail to learn from history and address these warnings with the seriousness they deserve, the consequences may be even more devastating than those of the past. Recognizing these parallels is the first step toward breaking the cycle and building a more resilient and responsible future. Prophets and parables have long served as vital tools for imparting wisdom, challenging societal norms, and steering humanity toward a path of righteousness. Across cultures and religions, these narratives often contain timeless lessons that resonate beyond their original context, offering insights into personal growth, collective responsibility, and the human condition. In a world increasingly defined by complexity and uncertainty, revisiting the lessons from prophets and parables can help us navigate the challenges of the modern era with greater clarity and purpose. The role of prophets as messengers of truth. Prophets are often depicted as individuals chosen to convey divine messages, challenging the status quo and urging communities to correct their course. Whether it is Moses confronting Pharaoh, Isaiah warning of impending exile, or Muhammad calling for justice and monotheism, the role of the prophet is both transformative and disruptive. Prophets rarely bring comfortable messages. Instead, they highlight inconvenient truths, exposing corruption, idolatry, and moral decay. The resistance faced by prophets underscores a key lesson. People are often reluctant to accept uncomfortable truths, especially when those truths demand change. This is not merely a reflection of the past, but an enduring aspect of human nature. In today's world, modern-day prophets, in the form of scientists, activists, and thought leaders, often encounter similar resistance. Figures like Greta Thunberg, Malala Yousafzai, and Martin Luther King Jr. faced, and, in some cases, continue to face opposition because their messages challenge societal norms and vested interests. Just as ancient prophets were dismissed or persecuted, modern truth-tellers often endure ridicule or marginalization before their warnings are finally acknowledged. The lesson here is profound. Ignoring the voices that challenge us, no matter how uncomfortable, often comes at a great cost. Whether it is a prophet warning of spiritual ruin or a scientist sounding the alarm about climate change, their messages demand attention and action. Parables as timeless moral guides. Unlike direct warnings from prophets, parables use stories to illustrate complex moral and spiritual lessons. Their power lies in their relatability and the multiple layers of meaning they offer. For instance, Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan challenges societal biases and emphasizes compassion and humanity over rigid adherence to social hierarchies. Similarly, Aesop's fables, like The Ant and the Grasshopper, teach practical lessons about hard work, preparation, and foresight. The beauty of parables is their adaptability. They can be applied to various situations, allowing each generation to find relevance in their messages. For example, the parable of the prodigal son teaches forgiveness and redemption. In a modern context, it might resonate with families grappling with estrangement or communities striving to heal divisions. These stories remind us that human struggles are universal, and their resolutions often require empathy, humility, and the willingness to change. Applying prophetic lessons to modern challenges. The modern world is rife with challenges that echo the themes addressed by prophets and parables. Consider the warnings about environmental degradation. Many indigenous communities, akin to prophets of old, have long warned about the consequences of exploiting nature. Their messages align with the biblical principle of stewardship, urging humanity to care for the earth as a sacred responsibility. Yet, much like the warnings of ancient prophets, these calls have often been ignored in favor of short-term gain. Similarly, parables about greed and materialism, such as the story of King Midas or the biblical account of the rich man and Lazarus, find new relevance in a world marked by growing economic inequality. These tales challenge us to rethink the value we place on wealth and question the ethical implications of unchecked capitalism. They remind us that true richness lies not in material possessions but in relationships, community, and spiritual fulfillment. Lessons on leadership and humility. One of the most striking aspects of prophetic narratives is their emphasis on humility and servant leadership. Prophets often exemplify leadership through service rather than domination. Moses, despite his insecurities, leads his people out of slavery. Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, embodying the principle of servant leadership. These examples stand in stark contrast to the arrogance and self-serving nature of many modern leaders. Parables. 2. Emphasize the importance of humility. The story of the Pharisee and the tax collector teaches that genuine righteousness comes from humility, not self-righteousness. This lesson is especially relevant in an age where public figures and influencers often prioritize image over integrity. Warnings and hope, a balancing act. While the messages of prophets and parables often contain warnings, they are rarely devoid of hope. Even as prophets like Jeremiah warned of destruction, they also spoke of restoration and renewal. This duality teaches us that while facing the consequences of our actions is inevitable, redemption is always possible through sincere repentance and change. In modern times, this balance between warning and hope is crucial. Climate scientists, for example, not only highlight the dire consequences of inaction, but also offer pathways to mitigation and adaptation. Similarly, movements for social justice, while confronting systemic inequalities, inspire hope by showcasing progress and the potential for collective action. Embracing the lessons today. The lessons from prophets and parables challenge us to reflect on our priorities, question our assumptions, and act with integrity. They remind us that the path to a better future is rarely easy but always worth pursuing. In a world often distracted by the superficial, these timeless teachings urge us to seek deeper truths, embrace our shared humanity, and strive for a balance between accountability and grace. By integrating these lessons into our lives, we honor the wisdom of the past while building a foundation for a more just and compassionate future. The concept of the ripple effect is a powerful reminder of how even the smallest actions can create consequences far beyond our immediate surroundings. It is often easy to overlook the significance of our daily decisions, especially when we are caught up in the rush of life. Yet history provides countless examples of how a single choice, word, or event can set off a chain reaction, influencing communities, societies, and even the course of nations. The ripple effect demonstrates the interconnectedness of all individuals and the profound impact that our actions can have, even when we least expect it. History is filled with stories of individuals whose seemingly small actions triggered monumental changes. Rosa Parks' decision to remain seated on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama, in 1955 is one of the most iconic examples of the ripple effect in action. Parks, a black woman, simply refused to give up her seat for a white passenger, and in doing so, she ignited the Montgomery bus boycott, a crucial turning point in the civil rights movement. This simple act of defiance sparked a national movement that not only helped dismantle racial segregation in the United States, but also became a source of inspiration for global movements advocating for racial equality. Parks' action, while small in the grand scheme of the bus ride, reverberated across the country, contributing to the eventual passage of civil rights legislation and inspiring generations of activists and advocates for justice. Rosa Parks did not act in isolation. Her decision was part of a larger struggle for racial equality that had been ongoing for years. Yet, it serves as a stark reminder that one person's actions, even in the face of adversity, can make a significant difference. It shows that individual courage can fuel collective action and shift the course of history. The ripple effect of her defiance transcended national borders and has continued to resonate in global movements for racial justice and equality. The ripple effect is not limited to political or social movements. It can also be seen in the efforts of activists fighting for environmental sustainability. For decades, environmentalists have warned about the dangers of human impact on the planet. And though many of their early warnings were ignored, Their activism eventually sparked widespread change. The environmental movement, which began with the efforts of a few passionate individuals, has grown into a global movement that advocates for the preservation of the planet's ecosystems. The rise of renewable energy, sustainable business practices, and the growing recognition of climate change as a critical issue are the direct result of decades of advocacy, activism, and public awareness campaigns. Greta Thunberg's school strike for climate action, which began as a solitary protest in Sweden, is a prime example of how one individual's actions can lead to a global movement. What started as a lone voice calling for action has now become a worldwide phenomenon, with millions of young people participating in climate strikes and demanding that governments take responsibility for their role in the environmental crisis. Thunberg's choice to take a stand, despite facing criticism and skepticism, triggered a ripple effect that amplified the message of climate activism and contributed to global calls for action on climate change. The collective efforts of activists like Thunberg have influenced policies and practices at the highest levels of government and business. The Paris Agreement, which brought together nations from around the world to address climate change, would not have been possible without the pressure created by years of environmental activism. The ripple effect of their efforts continues to shape the global conversation around climate change, making it one of the most pressing issues of our time. Another powerful example of the ripple effect can be seen in the women's suffrage movement. What began as a small, localized effort to secure voting rights for women grew into a global movement that has had far-reaching consequences for gender equality. Women across the world, from the United States to the United Kingdom, united in their struggle for equal rights, and their efforts eventually led to the granting of voting rights to women in many countries. Today, the ripple effect of the suffrage movement is evident in the increased participation of women in politics, the workplace, and society. It continues to inspire new generations of women who are fighting for gender equality and women's rights around the world. The ripple effect extends beyond social movements and political activism. It can also be seen in the everyday decisions we make in our personal lives. Every action, no matter how small, can have a profound impact on those around us. Simple acts of kindness, compassion, and generosity can create a ripple of positivity that spreads outward, influencing relationships and fostering a sense of community. When we take the time to listen to others, offer help when needed, or stand up for what is right, we set in motion a series of events that can change lives in unexpected ways. Even the smallest acts can influence the course of someone's day or, in some cases, their entire life. A kind word at the right moment can lift someone's spirits and change their outlook on the day ahead. A simple gesture of support can help someone feel seen and valued, strengthening the bonds of friendship and trust. The ripple effect of kindness is not always immediately visible, but over time, it creates a culture of empathy and understanding that benefits everyone involved. The ripple effect is particularly evident in the realm of global politics, where decisions made by one country or leader can have consequences that are felt around the world. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 is a powerful example of how a single event can have a cascading effect on international relations. The end of the Cold War not only reshaped the political landscape of Eastern Europe, but also led to significant shifts in global alliances, trade, and diplomacy. The consequences of the Soviet collapse are still being felt today, as former Soviet states continue to navigate their new political and economic realities. Similarly, the Arab Spring of 2010 demonstrated the far-reaching effects of political unrest. What began with a single act of protest, a self-immolation by a street vendor in Tunisia, set off a wave of demonstrations across the Arab world. The ripple effect of the Arab Spring led to the toppling of several long-standing regimes and sparked a global conversation about democracy, human rights, and political freedom. While the outcomes of the Arab Spring were mixed, with some countries experiencing continued instability, the movement nonetheless demonstrated the power of collective action and the potential for change, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. On a personal level, the ripple effect challenges us to be mindful of the consequences of our actions. Each of us has the ability to influence the world around us, and our choices, however small, can have a lasting impact, whether it's through our interactions with others, the causes we choose to support, or the values we uphold, we can create ripples that extend far beyond our immediate circles. The ripple effect reminds us that we are all part of a larger community, and our actions have the potential to shape the world for the better. The ripple effect calls us to recognize the interconnectedness of all things. It encourages us to consider the long-term consequences of our choices and to understand that our actions have the power to create positive change, even in ways we may not fully comprehend. By acting with intention and compassion, we can set off ripples that resonate across time, inspiring others to do the same and contributing to a world that is more just, compassionate, and interconnected. As we reflect on the concepts we've explored, ripple effects, the power of individual actions, and the profound consequences that even small moments can yield, we are reminded of the extraordinary impact we can have on the world around us. Each of us, regardless of our station or circumstance, is capable of creating change, whether on a personal level or on a much larger, global scale. The ripple effect reveals that our actions, however seemingly insignificant, can extend far beyond what we can see in the moment. This recognition, while humbling, is also empowering, for it reminds us that we have agency and influence over the direction our world takes. Throughout history, individuals have harnessed this power through activism, courage, and resilience to inspire widespread change. Whether it's Rosa Parks' quiet defiance on that Montgomery bus or Greta Thunberg's determined school strike for climate action, the ripple effect of these actions has reverberated across time and space. These examples, as well as countless others, show us that change is often sparked by one person, one choice, one moment. But these moments don't stand alone. They intertwine and interact with the decisions and actions of others, creating a web of influence that shapes societies, ideologies, and futures. It's easy to dismiss the idea that our everyday actions matter, especially when faced with the challenges of the world today. The weight of global issues, climate change, political unrest, inequality, and more can seem overwhelming, and it may feel as though our individual efforts are just a drop in an ocean too vast to have an impact. Yet, as we've seen, even the smallest of acts can ripple outward and lead to transformations. Just as a single stone dropped into a pond creates a series of expanding circles, our actions, be they small gestures of kindness, moments of courage, or standing up for what we believe in, can set off a chain reaction that shapes the future. In a world that often feels fragmented, this understanding of the ripple effect underscores the importance of connection. The choices we make and the ways we interact with others not only affect our immediate surroundings, but also send out waves that can touch lives in ways we might never fully comprehend. Just as in the stories we've seen, the courage to speak out, to stand firm in one's values, and to act with integrity can inspire others to do the same, creating a collective force of change that transcends boundaries. But the ripple effect is not just about moments of grand historical change. It's about the everyday choices we make and the lessons we impart to others. It's in the small, seemingly inconsequential actions that we lay the groundwork for larger transformations. The impact of a simple kind word, a small act of charity, or a decision to take a stand for justice can go far beyond our immediate circle. These everyday decisions, when multiplied across time and space, create a ripple that can foster a culture of empathy, respect, and mutual understanding. However, the most powerful aspect of the ripple effect is the recognition that we are all connected. Every individual decision, no matter how small, becomes part of the larger narrative of humanity. And it's this interconnectedness that allows us to enact change not just within our own communities, but across the world. We see this clearly in the global movements sparked by individuals, whether it's climate action, gender equality, or racial justice. These movements show that when one person rises to the challenge, it can ignite a spark that burns brightly across the world. Yet, they also remind us that we, too, are responsible for the way this ripple effect manifests. We can choose to be part of positive change, to advocate for justice and fairness, and to create a world where every person's actions matter. In light of these insights, I urge you to take a moment to reflect on your own actions. What kind of ripple effect do you want to create in the world? How can you contribute to the broader conversation about justice, kindness, and empathy? Each one of us has the potential to contribute to this wave of change, whether through our professional work, personal relationships, or by taking active steps to address the challenges facing our communities. The world needs more individuals who are willing to stand up and take action, whether it's pushing back against injustice, advocating for equality, or helping others in need. Every decision we make sends out ripples that influence the broader narrative. This is not about waiting for someone else to make the change. It's about recognizing that we have the power to act right now. Each moment offers an opportunity to be part of something larger than ourselves, to be part of a ripple that builds toward positive change. So, I invite you to take action, whether it's starting with small, personal choices or contributing to larger causes. You have the ability to spark a ripple that will carry on far beyond your immediate view. The actions you take today, no matter how minor they seem, can reverberate across time, inspiring others and shaping the future in ways you might never expect. The power lies within your hands, and the potential for change is boundless. By embracing this power, you contribute to the greater good, and in turn, create a world that is more just, more compassionate, and more interconnected. I also encourage you to share these ideas with others, to create conversations that spark change, to be mindful of how you interact with the world around you. It's not just about what you do for yourself, but what you do for others that creates lasting impact. By standing together and committing to actions of empathy, justice, and kindness, we amplify the ripple effect. We create a chain of actions that builds upon itself and continues to grow. Every effort, no matter how small, is a building block for something greater. Finally, if this message resonates with you, I encourage you to subscribe to stay updated on new content that delves deeper into these themes and more. Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue this conversation about how we can all make a difference. It's time to be the change we wish to see in the world and to set the ripple effect in motion. The future is in our hands, and it begins with the actions we take today.